The M16 Rifle, officially designated rifle, caliber 5.56 mm, M16, is a United States military adaptation of the Armalite AR-15 rifle. The original M16 was a selective fire 5.56 mm rifle with a 20-round magazine. In 1964, the M16 entered U.S. military service and the following year was deployed for jungle warfare operations during the Vietnam War. In 1969, the M16a2 replaced the M14 rifle to become the U.S. military's standard service rifle. The M16a2 improvements include a bolt assist, chrome-plated bore and a new 30-round magazine. In 1983, the U.S. Marine Corps adopted the M16a2 rifle and the U.S. Army adopted it in 1986. The M16a2 fires the improved 5.56 x 45 mm NATO M855/SS109 cartridge and has a new adjustable rear sight, case deflector, heavy barrel, improved handguard, pistol grip, and buttstock, as well as a semi-auto and 3-round burst-only fire selector. Adopted in 1998, the M16a4 is the fourth generation of the M16 series. It is equipped with a removable carrying handle and Picatinny rail for mounting optics and other ancillary devices. The M16 has also been widely adopted by other militaries around the world. Total worldwide production of M16s has been approximately 8 million, making it the most produced firearm of its 5.56 mm caliber. The U.S. Army has largely replaced the M16 in combat units with the shorter and lighter M4 carbine, and the U.S. Marine Corps approved a similar change in October 2015. History. Background. After World War II, the United States military started looking for a single automatic rifle to replace the M1 Garand, M1/M2 carbines, M1918 Browning automatic rifle, M3 grease gun and Thompson submachine gun. However, early experiments with select-fire versions of the M1 Garand proved disappointing. During the Korean War, the select-fire M2 carbine largely replaced the submachine gun in U.S. service and became the most widely used carbine variant. However, combat experience suggested that the .30 carbine round was underpowered. American weapons designers concluded that an intermediate round was necessary, and recommended a small-caliber, high-velocity cartridge. However, senior American commanders, having faced fanatical enemies and experienced major logistical problems during World War II and the Korean War, insisted that a single powerful .30 caliber cartridge be developed, that could not only be used by the new automatic rifle, but by the new general-purpose machine gun, GPMG, in concurrent development. This culminated in the development of the 7.62 x 51 mm NATO cartridge. The U.S. Army then began testing several rifles to replace the obsolete M1 Garand. Springfield Armory's T44E4 and heavier T44E5 were essentially updated versions of the Garand chambered for the new 7.62 mm round, while Fabrique Nationale submitted their FN FAL as the T48. Armalite entered the competition late, hurriedly submitting several AR-10 prototype rifles in the fall of 1956 to the U.S. Army's Springfield Armory for testing. The AR-10 featured an innovative straight-line barrel/stock design, forged aluminum alloy receivers and with phenolic composite stocks. It had rugged elevated sights, an oversized aluminum flash suppressor and recoil compensator, and an adjustable gas system. The final prototype featured an upper and lower receiver with the now familiar hinge and takedown pins, and the charging handle was on top of the receiver placed inside of the carry handle. For a 7.62 mm NATO rifle, the AR-10 was incredibly lightweight at only 6.85 pounds empty. Initial comments by Springfield Armory test staff were favorable, and some testers commented that the AR-10 was the best lightweight automatic rifle ever tested by the Armory. In the end, the U.S. Army chose the T44, now called the M14 rifle, which was an improved M1 Garand with a 20-round magazine and automatic fire capability. The U.S. also adopted the M60 General Purpose Machine Gun, GPMG. Its NATO partners adopted the FN FAL and HKG-3 rifles, as well as the FN MAG and Rheinmetall MG3 GPMGs. The first confrontations between the AK-47 and the M14 came in the early part of the Vietnam War. Battlefield reports indicated that the M14 was uncontrollable in full auto and that soldiers could not carry enough ammunition to maintain fire superiority over the AK-47. And, while the M2 carbine offered a high rate of fire, it was underpowered and ultimately outclassed by the AK-47. A replacement was needed, a medium between the traditional preference for high-powered rifles such as the M14, and the lightweight firepower of the M2 carbine. As a result, the Army was forced to reconsider a 1957 request by General Willard G. Wyman, commander of the U.S. Continental Army Command, CONARC, to develop a .223-inch caliber, 5.56 mm, select-fire rifle weighing 6 pounds, 2.7 kilograms, when loaded with a 20-round magazine. The 5.56 mm round had to penetrate a standard U.S. helmet at 500 yards, 460 meters, and retain a velocity in excess of the speed of sound, while matching or exceeding the wounding ability of the .30 carbine cartridge. This request ultimately resulted in the development of a scaled-down version of the Armalite AR-10, called Armalite AR-15 rifle. However, despite overwhelming evidence that the AR-15 could bring more firepower to bear than the M14, the Army opposed the adoption of the new rifle. In January 1963, Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara concluded that the AR-15 was the superior weapon system and ordered a halt to M14 production. At the time, the AR-15 was the only rifle available that could fulfill the requirement of a universal infantry weapon for issue to all services. After modifications, most notably, the charging handle was relocated from under the carrying handle like AR-10 to the rear of the receiver. The new redesigned rifle was subsequently adopted as the M16 Rifle. The M16 was much lighter compared to the M14 it replaced, ultimately allowing soldiers to carry more ammunition. The air-cooled, gas-operated, magazine-fed assault rifle was made of steel, aluminum alloy, and composite plastics, truly cutting-edge for the time. Designed with full and semi-automatic capabilities, the weapon initially did not respond well to wet and dirty conditions, sometimes even jamming in combat. After a few minor modifications, the weapon gained in popularity among troops on the battlefield. Despite its early failures, the M16 proved to be a revolutionary design and stands as the longest continuously serving rifle in American military history. It has been adopted by many U.S. allies, and the 5.56 x 45 mm NATO cartridge has become not only the NATO standard, but the standard assault rifle cartridge in much of the world. It also led to the development of small-caliber high-velocity service rifles by every major army in the world, including the USSR and People's Republic of China. It is a benchmark against which other assault rifles are judged. Adoption. In July 1960, General Curtis LeMay was impressed by a demonstration of the Armalite AR-15. In the summer of 1961, General LeMay was promoted to U.S. Air Force Chief of Staff, and requested 80,000 AR-15s. However, General Maxwell D. Taylor, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, advised President John F. Kennedy that having two different calibers within the military system at the same time would be problematic, and the request was rejected. In October 1961, William Goodell, a senior man at the Advanced Research Projects Agency, sent 10 AR-15s to South Vietnam. The reception was enthusiastic, and in 1962, another 1,000 AR-15s were sent. United States Army Special Forces personnel filed battlefield reports lavishly praising the AR-15 and the stopping power of the 5.56 mm cartridge, and pressed for its adoption. The damage caused by the 5.56 mm bullet was originally believed to be caused by tumbling due to the slow 1 in 14-inch, 360 mm, rifling twist rate. However, any pointed lead core bullet will tumble after penetration in flesh, because the center of gravity is towards the rear of the bullet. The large wounds observed by soldiers in Vietnam were actually caused by bullet fragmentation, which was created by a combination of the bullet's velocity and construction. These wounds were so devastating, that the photographs remained classified into the 1980s. However, despite overwhelming evidence that the AR-15 could bring more firepower to bear than the M14, the Army opposed the adoption of the new rifle. U.S. Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara now had two conflicting views, the ARPA report favoring the AR-15 and the Army's position favoring the M14. Even President Kennedy expressed concern, so McNamara ordered Secretary of the Army Cyrus Vance to test the M14, the AR-15 and the AK-47. The Army reported that only the M14 was suitable for service, but Vance wondered about the impartiality of those conducting the tests. He ordered the Army Inspector General to investigate the testing methods used. The Inspector General confirmed that the testers were biased towards the M14. In January 1963, Secretary McNamara received reports that M14 production was insufficient to meet the needs of the armed forces and ordered a halt to M14 production. At the time, the AR-15 was the only rifle that could fulfill a requirement of a universal infantry weapon for issue to all services. McNamara ordered its adoption, despite receiving reports of several deficiencies, most notably the lack of a chrome-plated chamber. After modifications, most notably, the charging handle was relocated from under the carrying handle like AR-10 to the rear of the receiver. The new redesigned rifle was renamed the Rifle, caliber 5.56 mm, M16. Inexplicably, the modification to the new M16 did not include a chrome-plated barrel. Meanwhile, the Army relented and recommended the adoption of the M16 for jungle warfare operations. However, the Army insisted on the inclusion of a forward assist to help push the bolt into battery in the event that a cartridge failed to seat into the chamber. The Air Force, Colt, and Eugene Stoner believed that the addition of a forward assist was an unjustified expense. As a result, the design was split into two variants, the Air Force's M16 without the forward assist, and the XM16E1 with the forward assist for the other service branches. In November 1963, McNamara approved the U.S. Army's order of 85,000 XM16E1s, and to appease General LeMay, the Air Force was granted an order for another 19,000 M16s. In March 1964, the M16 rifle went into production and the Army accepted delivery of the first batch of 2,129 rifles later that year, and an additional 57,240 rifles the following year. In 1964, the Army was informed that DuPont could not mass-produce the IMR 4475 stick powder to the specifications demanded by the M16. Therefore, Olin Matheson Company provided a high-performance ball propellant. While the Olin WC-846 powder achieved the desired 3,300 feet, 1,000 m, per second muzzle velocity, it produced much more fouling, that quickly jammed the M16's action, unless the rifle was cleaned well and often. In March 1965, the Army began to issue the XM16E1 to infantry units. However, the rifle was initially delivered without adequate cleaning kits or instructions because Colt had claimed the M16 was self-cleaning. As a result, reports of stoppages in combat began to surface. The most severe problem, was known as failure to extract the spent cartridge case remained lodged in the chamber after the rifle was fired. Documented accounts of dead U.S. troops found next to disassembled rifles eventually led to a congressional investigation. "We left with 72 men in our platoon and came back with 19, believe it or not, you know what killed most of us? Our own rifle. Practically every one of our dead was found with his M16, torn down next to him where he had been trying to fix it." Marine Corps Rifleman, Vietnam. In February 1967, the improved XM16E1 was standardized as the M16a1. The new rifle had a chrome-plated chamber and bore to eliminate corrosion and stuck cartridges and other, minor, modifications. New cleaning kits, powder solvents, and lubricants were also issued. Intensive training programs in weapons cleaning were instituted, including a comic book-style operations manual. As a result, reliability problems greatly diminished and the M16a1 rifle achieved widespread acceptance by U.S. troops in Vietnam. In 1969, the M16a1 officially replaced the M14 rifle to become the U.S. military's standard service rifle. In 1970, the new WC-844 powder was introduced to reduce fouling. Reliability. During the early part of its career, the M16 had a reputation for poor reliability and a malfunction rate of 2 per 1,000 rounds fired. The M16's action works by passing high-pressure propellant gases tapped from the barrel down a tube and into the carrier group within the upper receiver, and is commonly referred to as a direct impingement gas system. The gas expands within a donut-shaped gas cylinder within the carrier. Because the bolt is prevented from moving forward by the barrel, the carrier is driven to the rear by the expanding gases and thus converts the energy of the gas to movement of the rifle's parts. The bolt bears a piston head and the cavity in the bolt carrier is the piston sleeve. It is more correct to call it an internal piston system. This design is much lighter and more compact than a gas piston design. However, this design requires that combustion byproducts from the discharged cartridge be blown into the receiver as well. This accumulating carbon and vaporized metal built up within the receiver and bolt carrier negatively affects reliability and necessitates more intensive maintenance on the part of the individual soldier. The channeling of gases into the bolt carrier during operation increases the amount of heat that is deposited in the receiver while firing the M16 and causes essential lubricant to be burned off. This requires frequent and generous applications of appropriate lubricant. Lack of proper lubrication is the most common source of weapon stoppages or jams. The original M16 fared poorly in the jungles of Vietnam and was infamous for reliability problems in the harsh environment. As a result, it became the target of a congressional investigation. The investigation found that the M16 was built as self-cleaning, when no weapon is or ever has been. The M16 was issued to troops without cleaning kits or instruction on how to clean the rifle. The M16 and 5.56 x 45 mm cartridge was tested and approved with the use of a DuPont IMR8208M extruded powder, that was switched to Olin Matheson WC846 ball powder which produced much more fouling, that quickly jammed the action of the M16, unless the gun was cleaned well and often. The M16 lacked a forward assist, rendering the rifle inoperable when it jammed. The M16 lacked a chrome-plated chamber, which allowed corrosion problems and contributed to case extraction failures, which was considered the most severe problem and required extreme measures to clear, such as inserting the cleaning rod down the barrel and knocking the spent cartridge out. When these issues were addressed and corrected by the M16a1, the reliability problems decreased greatly. According to a 1968 Department of Army report, the M16a1 rifle achieved widespread acceptance by U.S. troops in Vietnam. Most men armed with the M16 in Vietnam rated this rifle's performance high. However, many men entertained some misgivings about the M16's reliability. When asked what weapon they preferred to carry in combat, 85% indicated that they wanted either the M16 or its submachine gun version, the M177e2. Also the M14 was preferred by 15%, while less than 1% wished to carry either the Stoner rifle, the AK-47, the carbine or a pistol. In March 1970, the President's Blue Ribbon Defense Panel concluded that the issuance of the M16 saved the lives of 20,000 U.S. servicemen during the Vietnam War, who would have otherwise died had the M14 remained in service. However, the M16 rifle's reputation continues to suffer. After the introduction of the M4 carbine, it was found that the shorter barrel length of 14.5 inches also has a negative effect on reliability, as the gas port is located closer to the chamber than the gas port of the standard length M16 rifle, 7.5 inches instead of 13 inches. This affects the M4's timing and increases the amount of stress and heat on the critical components, thereby reducing reliability. In a 2002 assessment, the USMC found that the M4 malfunctioned 3 times more often than the M16a4. The M4 failed 186 times for 69,000 rounds fired, while the M16a4 failed 61 times. Thereafter, the Army and Colt worked to make modifications to the M4S and M16a4S in order to address the problems found. In tests conducted in 2005 and 2006, the Army found that on average, the new M4S and M16s fired approximately 5,000 rounds between stoppages. In December 2006, the Center for Naval Analyses, CNA, released a report on U.S. small arms in combat. The CNA conducted surveys on 2,608 troops returning from combat in Iraq and Afghanistan over the past 12 months. Only troops who fired their weapons at enemy targets were allowed to participate. 1,188 troops were armed with M16a2 or A4 rifles, making up 46% of the survey. 75% of M16 users, 891 troops, reported they were satisfied with the weapon. 60%, 713 troops, were satisfied with handling qualities such as handguards, size, and weight. Of the 40% dissatisfied, most were with its size. Only 19% of M16 users, 226 troops, reported a stoppage, while 80% of those that experienced a stoppage said it had little impact on their ability to clear the stoppage and re-engage their target. Half of the M16 users never experienced failures of their magazines to feed. 83%, 986 troops, did not need their rifles repaired while in theater. 71%, 843 troops, were confident in the M16's reliability, defined as level of soldier confidence their weapon will fire without malfunction, and 72%, 855 troops, were confident in its durability, defined as level of soldier confidence their weapon will not break or need repair. Both factors were attributed to high levels of soldiers performing their own maintenance. 60% of M16 users offered recommendations for improvements. Requests included greater bullet lethality, new built instead of rebuilt rifles, better quality magazines, decreased weight, and a collapsible stock. Some users recommended shorter and lighter weapons such as M4 carbine. Some issues have been addressed with the issuing of the improved Stanag magazine in March 2009, and the M855A1 enhanced performance round in June 2010. In early 2010, two journalists from the New York Times spent 3 months with soldiers and Marines in Afghanistan. While there, they questioned around 100 infantry troops about the reliability of their M16 rifles, as well as the M4 carbine. The troops did not report reliability problems with their rifles. While only 100 troops were asked, they engaged in daily fighting in Marja, including least a dozen intense engagements in Helmand province, where the ground is covered in fine powdered sand, called moon dust by troops, that can stick to firearms. Weapons were often dusty, wet, and covered in mud. Intense firefights lasted hours with several magazines being expended. Only one soldier reported a jam when his M16 was covered in mud after climbing out of a canal. The weapon was cleared and resumed firing with the next chambered round. Furthermore, the Marine Chief Warrant Officer responsible for weapons training and performance of the 3rd Battalion, 6th Marines, reported that "We've had nil in the way of problems, we've had no issues with his battalion's 350 minutes and 16 seconds and 700 minutes and 4 seconds. Design. The M16 is a lightweight, 5.56 mm, air-cooled, gas-operated, magazine-fed assault rifle, with a rotating bolt. The M16's receivers are made of 7075 aluminum alloy, its barrel, bolt, and bolt carrier of steel, and its handguards, pistol grip, and buttstock of plastics. The M16a1 was especially lightweight at 7.9 pounds, 3.6 kilograms, with a loaded 30-round magazine. This was significantly less than the M14 that it replaced at 10.7 pounds, 4.9 kilograms, with a loaded 20-round magazine. It is also lighter when compared to the AKM's 8.3 pounds, 3.8 kilograms, with a loaded 30-round magazine. The M16a2 weighs 8.8 pounds, 4.0 kilograms, loaded with a 30-round magazine, because of the adoption of a thicker barrel profile. The thicker barrel is more resistant to damage when handled roughly and is also slower to overheat during sustained fire. Unlike a traditional bull barrel that is thick its entire length, the M16a2's barrel is only thick forward of the handguards. The barrel profile under the handguards remained the same as the M16a1 for compatibility with the M203 grenade launcher. Barrel. Early model M16 barrels had a rifling twist of 4 grooves, right-hand twist, 1 turn in 14 inches, 1:355.6 mm, bore, as it was the same rifling used by the .222 Remington sporting round. This was shown to make the light .223 Remington bullet yaw in flight at long ranges, and it was soon replaced. Later models had an improved rifling with 6 grooves, right-hand twist, 1 turn in 12 inches, 1:304.8 mm, for increased accuracy and was optimized for use with the standard US M193 cartridge. Current models are optimized for the heavier NATO SS109 bullet and have 6 grooves, right-hand twist, 1 turn in 7 in, 1:177.8 mm. Weapons designed to accept both the M193 or SS109 rounds, like civilian market clones, usually have a 6-groove, right-hand twist, 1 turn in 9 inches, 1:228.6 mm, bore, although 1:8 inches and 1:7 inches twist rates are available as well. Recoil. The M16's stoner system provides a very symmetric design that allows straight line movement of the operating components. This allows recoil forces to drive straight to the rear. Instead of connecting or other mechanical parts driving the system, high-pressure gas performs this function, reducing the weight of moving parts and the rifle as a whole. The M16's straight-line recoil design, where the recoil spring is located in the stock directly behind the action, and serves the dual function of operating spring and recoil buffer. The stock being in line with the bore also reduces muzzle rise, especially during automatic fire. Because recoil does not significantly shift the point of aim, faster follow-up shots are possible and user fatigue is reduced. Also, current model M16 flash suppressors also act as compensators to reduce recoil further. Sights. The M16's most distinctive ergonomic feature is the carrying handle and rear sight assembly on top of the receiver. This is a byproduct of the original design, where the carry handle served to protect the charging handle. As the line of sight is 2.5 in, 63.5 mm, over the bore, the M16 has an inherent parallax problem. At closer ranges, typically inside 15-20 meters, the shooter must compensate by aiming high to place shots where desired. The M16 has a 500 mm, 19.75 inches, sight radius. The M16 uses an L-type flip, aperture rear sight, and it is adjustable with 2 settings, 0 to 300 meters and 300 to 400 meters. The front sight is a post adjustable for elevation in the field. The rear sight can be adjusted in the field for windage. The sights can be adjusted with a bullet tip or pointed tool, as troops are trained to zero their own rifles. The sight picture is the same as the M14, M1 Garand, M1 Carbine, and the M1917 Enfield. The M16 also has a low-light level sight system, which includes a front sight post with a small glass vial of glow-in-the-dark, radioactive tritium H3 and a larger aperture rear sight. The M16 can also mount a scope on the carrying handle. With the advent of the M16a2, a new fully adjustable rear sight was added, allowing the rear sight to be dialed in for specific range settings between 300 and 800 meters and to allow windage adjustments without the need of a tool or cartridge. Modern versions such as M16a4 have a detachable carrying handle and use Picatinny rails, which allows for the use of various scopes and sighting devices. The current U.S. Army and Air Force issue M4 carbine comes with the M68 close combat optic and backup iron sight. The U.S. Marine Corps uses the ACOG rifle combat optic and the U.S. Navy uses EOTech holographic weapon sight. Range and accuracy. The M16 rifle is considered to be very accurate. Its light recoil, high velocity and flat trajectory allow shooters to take headshots out to 300 meters. Newer M16s use the newer M855 cartridge, increasing their effective range to 600 meters. They are more accurate than their predecessors and are capable of shooting 1 3-inch groups at 100 yards. In Fallujah, Marines with ACOG-equipped M16a4s created a stir by taking so many headshots that until the wounds were closely examined, some observers thought the insurgents had been executed. The newest M855A1 EPR cartridge is even more accurate and during testing, has shown that, on average, 95% of the rounds will hit within an 8x8-inch target at 600 meters. Terminal ballistics. The 5.56x45 mm cartridge had several advantages over the 7.62x51 mm NATO round used in the M16 rifle. It enabled each soldier to carry more ammunition and was easier to control during automatic or burst fire. The 5.56x45 mm NATO cartridge can also produce massive wounding effects when the bullet impacts at high speed and yaws, tumbles, in tissue leading to fragmentation and rapid transfer of energy. The original ammunition for the M16 was the 55-grain M193 cartridge. When fired from a 20 barrel at ranges of up to 100 meters, the thin-jacketed lead cord round traveled fast enough, above 2,900 feet/s, that the force of striking a human body would cause the round to yaw, or tumble, and fragment into about a dozen pieces of various sizes, thus created wounds that were out of proportion to its caliber. These wounds were so devastating that many considered the M16 to be an inhumane weapon. As the 5.56 mm round's velocity decreases, so does the number of fragments that it produces. The 5.56 mm round does not normally fragment at distances beyond 200 meters or at velocities below 2,500 feet/s, and its lethality becomes largely dependent on shot placement. With the development of the M16a2, the new 62-grain M855 cartridge was adopted in 1983. The heavier bullet had more energy, and was made with a steel core to penetrate Soviet body armor. However, this caused less fragmentation on impact and reduced effects against targets without armor, both of which lessened kinetic energy transfer and wounding ability. Some soldiers and Marines coped with this through training, with requirements to shoot vital areas 3 times to guarantee killing the target. However, there have been repeated and consistent reports of the M855's inability to wound effectively, i.e. fragment, when fired from the short-barreled M4 carbine, even at close ranges. The M4's 14.5 barrel length reduces muzzle velocity to about 2,900 feet/s. This reduced wounding ability is one reason that, despite the Army's transition to short-barrel M4s, the Marine Corps has decided to continue using the M16a4 with its 2.0 barrel, as the 5.56x45 mm M855 is largely dependent upon high velocity in order to wound effectively. In 2003, the U.S. Army contended that the lack of lethality of the 5.56x45 mm was more a matter of perception than fact. With good shot placement to the head and chest, the target was usually defeated without issue. The majority of failures were the result of hitting the target in non-vital areas such as extremities. However, a minority of failures occurred in spite of multiple hits to the chest. In 2006, a study found that 20% of soldiers using the M4 carbine wanted more lethality or stopping power. In June 2010, the U.S. Army announced it began shipping its new 5.56 mm, lead-free, M855A1 enhanced performance round to active combat zones. This upgrade is designed to maximize performance of the 5.56x45 mm round, to extend range, improve accuracy, increase penetration, and to consistently fragment in soft tissue when fired from not only standard-length M16s, but also the short-barreled M4 carbines. The U.S. Army has been so impressed with the new M855A1 EPR round that they're now developing a 7.62 NATO variant. Magazines. The M16's magazine was meant to be a lightweight, disposable item. As such, it is made of pressed/stamped aluminum and was not designed to be durable. The M16 originally used a 20-round magazine, which was later replaced by a bent 30-round design. As a result, the magazine follower tends to rock or tilt, causing malfunctions. Many non-U.S and commercial magazines have been developed to effectively mitigate these shortcomings, e.g., H&K's all stainless steel magazine, Magpul's polymer P-Mag, etc. Production of 30-round magazines started late 1967 but did not fully replace the 20-round magazine until the mid-1970s. Standard USGI aluminum 30-round M16 magazines weigh 0.24 pounds, 0.11 kilograms, empty and are 7.1 inches, 18 centimeters, long. The newer plastic magazines are about a half-inch longer. The newer steel magazines are about 0.5 inch longer and 4 ounces heavier. The M16s magazine has become the unofficial NATO standard magazine and is currently used by many Western nations, in numerous weapon systems. In 2009, the U.S. military began fielding an improved magazine identified by a tan-colored follower. The new follower incorporates an extended rear leg and modified bullet protrusion for improved round stacking and orientation. The self-leveling /anti-tilt follower minimizes jamming while a wider spring coil profile creates even force distribution. The performance gains.
Please subscribe and thanks for watching.